Hey guys, this is What If Deku Was a Viltrumite Part 4. Let's dive right into it. When I last left off during the USJ event, Izuku fought the Nomu. The Nomu seemed to be a little stronger than usual by original canon standards, and also it led to Izuku unlocking more of his potential. But yeah, we get switched to, well, the next following days after Izuku's whole hospital trip and also going on a date with Uraraka from last part 3. So we continue our story off there. Izuku wakes up kind of tired. As he gets up, putting on his uniform, as his mom tells him not to get late to school and to get there on time because he kind of is, well, late. Izuku basically being kind of confused as his mom would have told him that you're late to school and that, well, with everything that happened at the USJ, I thought you could use the extra sleep. Izuku would have said, "Thank you, mom, but I didn't need that extra sleep," as he starts to run out the room and out of the house, telling he loves his mom and flying off back to, well, UA. He walks into class and everybody looks at him like he's a sore thumb or he has something on his face because, well, he's like 20 minutes late to Aizawa's class. So off rip, Aizawa doesn't like how he just showed up late and low-key berates him, thinking he thinks he's the best just because he's strong. But more or less, the class is told about what's going on in the future days to come, about the sports festival, and about how the sports festival still being or still happening, considering everything that happened to the USJ, would be a really good thing for the school, and it would show strength and, I guess you could say, fearlessness. So more or less, the class is told about the USJ, and nothing really changes from that continuity. Besides, most of the classmates legitimately saying that Izuku's probably going to get a lot of offers, considering that he's literally one of the strongest people in the class besides Todoroki and Bakugo. So Izuku is just saying to himself, maybe he should try to train a little harder. Even though he's strong, and he's probably, if you're being realistic here, the strongest person in UA, he needs to start training a little harder and become a little bit more, I guess you could say, trained. He has his own problems going on with the whole mental problems and I guess you could say backdraws that happen with him being Son of Conquest and all these stuff about how he kind of loses his cool because considering that the Viltrumite gene, Viltrumite blood, they're literally born. They're bred to be warriors. They're bred to fight. They're bred to do war and conquest. They're not really breeded to like be a hero, more or less. But more or less, well, Izuku gets ready and is about to do some training as he gets a call from Uraraka. Uraraka kind of asks maybe they should train together, considering that his quirk is, well, main quirk is kind of flying because he flies a lot, as it can probably help her with her gravitational powers. Izuku, well, agrees, and they spend some time together the following weeks, and more or less, they train together and kind of hone each other's skills. But besides them training together, we actually get switched to Bakugo, as Bakugo is training a lot harder than in continuity. He's training his butt off because he wants to be better. After what happened to the USJ, him not being much help besides keeping Kirigiri busy, more or less, Izuku did all the heavy lifting. He was able to take down a Nomu that was giving All Might of all people a run for his money. Izuku has been holding back so much in their fights, and more or less, when he went off on him doing the combat training, Bakugo was scared out of his life, and he never wanted to feel powerless like that ever again. But it kind of is, I guess you could say, ironic because that's what he made Izuku feel like. But more or less, Izuku and Bakugo are training their butts off, but between their, I guess you could say, rivalry, or what's going to go on between them, Bakugo more or less is training his butt off because he's trying to become better, he's trying to become stronger, and he's trying to get on Izuku's level, as he's more motivated and more pushed emotionally and physically to get on Izuku's level. In original canon, Bakugo trained his butt, right? He trained to become a better hero and to surpass Izuku to be his rival. But more or less, we get switched to Izuku and the rest of the class the first day of, well, the sports festival. Everybody gets ready and gets suited up into their sports uniforms as Izuku gets pressed by Todoroki. As he straight up says this off rip, "I'm going to beat you, Izuku." But everybody in the class is kind of confused and kind of shocked by this statement. Izuku, well, tries to get more, I guess you can say, detailed explanation of why he said this. Izuku asks Todoroki, "What are you talking about? What do you mean you're gonna beat me?" Izuku's a little bit cocky in his continuity, but yet again, he still is Izuku Midoriya. Him being humbled by the Nomu, him knowing he's not the strongest in the world, but him trying to at least get to a level where he's not incredibly cocky, or he can find some sort of solace in becoming one of the strongest. Because more or less, Izuku in the later episodes of the series will realize how alone he really is when it comes to pure raw strength. But with that being said, Izuku asks Todoroki, "What do you mean?" Todoroki goes on about how you might think you're the strongest in the class, you might think you're the best, but you're not. I am determined to beat you, only using half of my power. I don't need to go all out for you. You're nothing but a lucky bastard. As he talks to Izuku and talks down to him, as he gets shown a little bit more of a cocky, more shady personality of Todoroki. As Izuku is kind of blatantly pissed off, but more or less just as a slide, as he's going to humble Bakugo or humble Todoroki, both of them greatly when the USJ or the sports festival begins. Enough being said, let's dive right into the nitty gritty of this fiction, man. So, we continue off with the first match, the race. And the race, more or less, just to skim it through, Izuku dominates that. Todoroki still does the same thing, him trying to freeze everybody's feet with his ice and get a good head start, and also freezing the zero pointer on a tilt so it falls down and pretty much shortens and pretty much lengthens the duration of the race for the other contenders. Todoroki and Bakugo and Deku are mainly in the race and are in first place at this point. But Izuku's watching from afar, slowly going faster and faster, as eventually, when the cannon, or the, I guess you could say, the crater, or I guess you could say, obstacle course where everybody is jumping to pillar, Izuku just is kind of watching this from afar in the sky, as he just smirks, saying, I'm just done playing." As he just flies past everybody, flying so hard he lands and pretty much sets off all the landmines in the race and flies all the way to first place in a matter of seconds. Only the longest time he spent in the actual race was around, like, I guess you could say, like a minute, 2 minutes. So more or less, in the crowd and everybody watching is surprised and also incredibly intrigued. Izuku speeded through the entire race, not even having to lift a finger, besides just flying past everybody. Izuku gets ready for the next match, as everybody is told to pretty much kind of capture the flag with people's points and headbands. So Izuku gets ready as he has the highest headband, and the same team he did make in Original Canon does ask him to be on his team, with the other exceptions of other characters actually asking him on his team again because they know he's really strong and really fast and can probably carry the team. But Izuku still picks the same team he had in Original Canon, Tokiyami, Uraraka, and a couple others. So basically, their plan is Izuku just straight up grabs them all and flies up into the sky and just waits it out. And that's how they pass that test. But then it gets switched to the combat, or I guess you could say 1v1s. And this is when it really gets interesting. Now, when the first combat or 1v1s begin, everybody is more or less, kind of pumped and kind of speculating around who they're going to be teamed up against. They look at the stats, and more or less, the matches start to begin, as Izuku's first match comes to fruition, him versus Shinso. As in this continuity, he wasn't told about Shinso's quirk, considering that he was nowhere near anybody else, and more or less, he didn't, I guess you could say, make friends with Teleport Guy. Teleport Guy was cool with him. I forgot his name. I'll be honest with you guys. I forgot his name. I think his name was Jiro or something. I don't know. But more or less, yeah, like Izuku doesn't know that man. And the most friends he has made in class is Tokiyami, Kirishima, Denki, and well, who else was there? Oh, Zero. So he's basically friends with them, as more or less Izuku is told to be careful because they've heard rumors about Shinso's quirk. Izuku just walks into the ring thinking his quirk is something to do with maybe some sort of mist manipulation, considering that his power seems pretty vague. As Izuku is about to walk into the ring, as Shinso immediately starts the ring or the match off by shit talking Izuku. Izuku is contemplating replying back as he's about to yell out something as Izuku hears Shinso talk about Uraraka. Then goes on to talk about his mother, and then goes on to say that Izuku was some sort of bastard child. Deku is hearing all this and more or less is kind of pissed off because Shinso doesn't know shit about him. He doesn't know anything about him, his family, Uraraka, nobody. Izuku is really contemplating going off on Shinso, but more or less, he just ends off the match, grabbing Shinso by the arm before even saying anything, and chucking him out the ring. Shinso falls down and goes literally punting like when you throw a rock on the water. So basically, he skips like a rock. Izuku looks back, and everybody is not really surprised. Izuku's strength and speed was outstanding, and Shinso really had no chance of beating Izuku, even if he was able to get him under mind control, which would be kind of risky considering that, well, Izuku isn't much of a talker when he fights. Now we see that Izuku passes by this as nothing really happens differently besides Izuku being a little bit more emotionally driven when he sees Bakugo demolish Uraraka. Bakugo has heard the whole rumors of Izuku dating Uraraka, so he goes a little bit more harder on Uchaku to get under Izuku's skin. So more or less, Uraraka, she gets clapped. I mean, absolutely destroyed. The same fight, the same, I guess you could say, strategy she plays out to go against Bakugo still plays out, but more or less, it is scored way quicker and way faster and way more brutal. Bakugo berates her with a fury of explosions and gets her on his butt and more or less just destroys her and dominates her in this match. And it's way more brutal as most hero organizations are like confused and actually shocked on how hard Bakugo just went on this girl, because more or less that was unnecessary. As Bakugo walks out the ring, staring down Izuku in the stands and smirks. As Izuku gets pissed off and more or less tends to Uraraka as he checks up on Uraraka in Recovery Girl's office, and pretty much says that I'm going to make Bakugo pay for humiliating you like that. Uraraka replies, well, you don't have to do that, and it was just a match. It was nothing serious, it was nothing personal. As Deku goes on to say that it was personal, Uraraka. He never should have hit you like that, he never should have gone off on you like that. That was unnecessary for his classmate. As Uraraka tells him and grabs him by the chin, saying that it's okay and that it wasn't nothing personal. As she tries to insist that, saying that in the real world, in a real fight, a villain's gonna hit me as hard as Bakugo did, maybe even harder, and try to kill me. So it's good training, and it's good preparation for what's to come in my life. I want to become a pro hero. I want to support my family. As we get a little background on why Uraraka is doing this, why she's a pro hero, and why she wants to become a pro hero, why she's in UA, why she tried so hard, why she's fought so hard. As Deku is very, I guess you say, touched by her reasonings on why to become a hero. It's for the money, but it's for her also support her family. She's been through poverty, she's been through things in life. So Izuku does understand this, but more or less tells Uraraka that she is right, and that he won't lose his temper when he's fighting Bakugo. Uraraka chuckling saying, "Are you so sure you're gonna get the finals?" As Izuku chuckles saying, "What do you think?" As they look at each other, but they get interrupted when Recovery Girl walks in the office, telling them to, skedaddle now and to get your asses up and go back to the stands. So the next couple matches play out the same, and pretty much everything goes pretty much the same. Nothing really changes too much from the original continuity and the original matches. Izuku's walking down the hallways to go to the restroom after talking to Uraraka as he gets interrupted by a bulky man in blue tights, aka Endeavor. Endeavor asks Deku and says, "So you're the strongest one in Todoroki's class, the one that took on the Nomu, right?" He gets closer to Izuku, and Izuku says, "Yeah, what's it to you?" As Izuku knows Endeavor and is actually a low-key fan. but more or less, him looking up to his father and All Might more than Endeavor. Izuku is just hearing Endeavor talk about how Endeavor wants Todoroki and Shoto to use his true strength. Shoto can't go through life using only 50% of his potential. He'll never become the #1 hero that way, and he'll never become the best he can possibly become. You can't win when only using half of your strength. You can never go through life being like that. Izuku takes his words with actually a lot more, I guess you could say, thought, because he's been holding back a lot. The fight against Shinso, if he went all out, he would have ripped his arms off. The race, he would have caused a shockwave that probably would have made a collateral damage beyond the school's budget. More or less, Izuku has been holding back a lot. The only times he didn't hold back fully was against the Nomu, and also against, well, not Todoroki, but against Bakugo and Ida. But that was only a split second of him losing control. And he was so close to ripping Bakugo's head clean off. And he wasn't even using full strength, he just lost his cool. As Izuku hears these words that Todoroki's father is saying, that Endeavor is spewing out of his mouth, as he takes these words with a lot more gravity to him. But he does tell Endeavor that he'll try his hardest to try to toughen up Todoroki, and that he'll try to do a favor for him, but just tells him that if you really want him to be his true potential, maybe you should start to be a better father. As he walks away from Todoroki's father, or Endeavor, as the whole conversation Todoroki had with Deku did still play out the same. He does pull Deku in to a nearby hallway and more or less presses him and tells him and says that you aren't going to make me use my full power. And more or less the same conversation happens the same, but nothing about, quirk marriages or anything like that plays out. But he does go on about how Endeavor has forced him to be something he's not, has made him through the dream, the accomplishment, through the idea, the ideal of him becoming the best, being the best, and trying to make him the best. He lost family, his mother was taken away, and more or less, Todoroki confides in Izuku, but not telling him the full truth, but more or less telling him why he's so motivated to destroy him and how he is going to win. Izuku takes these words and is kind of sympathetic towards Todoroki, and Loki wants to help him. Izuku's still a good person, even if he's a Viltrumite. He's still a good person, and he still hasn't been destroyed mentally or physically like Mark Grayson has, yet. Because that's just for a story for another time. Because later in the series, we will learn and we will see Izuku change, his personality shift, and more or less, Izuku will become a lot more, I guess you can say, like his father. But that's a story for another time. Now what would happen is we see that Izuku gets ready for the match against Todoroki as the fight proceeds. Midnight tells him to go, as the fight starts off with a huge blast of ice, a huge mountain of ice being summoned from Todoroki to start off the fight. Todoroki not trying to underestimate Izuku's strength. Izuku tries to keep up and not try to overpower Todoroki, and tries to get some words between him and basically tell him, you can't win if you only use half your power. As Deku is determined to push push Todoroki to the limit. Now Todoroki is throwing ice pillar after ice pillar, ice wall after ice wall, absolute throwing gallons of tons of ice towards Izuku. As Izuku, to none of our surprise, is breaking through this ice like it's butter. He's cracking through it like it's absolute, hardened sugar, and more or less doesn't care. He's breaking through it like it's glass, as nothing's working against him. Todoroki using all of his power, as the only thing he can do really is just push Izuku back repeatedly with ice pillar after ice pillar after iceberg after iceberg. As Izuku's just tanking all these attacks, as everybody's shocked by how much durability this kid has. Deku speed blitz straight towards Todoroki, trying to grab him and trying to push him to his limits, and more or less taunt him. He's flying around and around and around him, and more or less is taunting him with more quirky remarks and more smirky comments, saying that it's all the best you got. You really think you're gonna win? You're nothing but a half-baked idiot. You can't win against me if you only pit all of half of you in. He starts to taunt and more or less belittle Todoroki and tries to get under his skin. But more or less he knows this isn't working, it's more or less just making Todoroki more mad. But he also sees flames start to appear slightly around Todoroki's body. So Izuku stops with the medieval type of torturing, with him basically belittling Todoroki and tells him that you're not going to win if you only pit half what you have in this. You can't win if you only pit 1%. You can't win in life. You can never become a pro hero. You can never prove to your father you'll be better than him if you only pit half. Izuku, seeing the look of hatred in Todoroki's eyes, and tells him that it's not his quirk, it's not your father's quirk, it's yours. Todoroki, it's yours. As the whole room kind of gets silent for Todoroki, as Todoroki has a flashback of all the memories of him, his mother, his brothers, his father, how he was literally isolated as a child by his own father. He couldn't even play with his siblings. Todoroki releases all of his power, all of his built up rage, anger, and animosity against his father, as a huge blast of fire and ice erupts the stage, as this is the big step towards Todoroki's change, towards Todoroki's development as a character. And soon, when the story unfolds, we see that Todoroki become one of Deku's best friends. But a huge blast of ice and flames erupt the entire match and the entire arena, as more pillars are pit between both of them because Deku flies off and tries to do a collision hit with him torpedoing straight towards Todoroki. A huge amount of pillars and concrete walls are put up because Cement Head is instructed to stop this match because these kids might kill each other. A huge explosion erupts the entire match as everybody watches with intent, trying to figure out, are these kids safe? Are they dead? What's going on? The smoke clears and the dust settles. They see Izuku still in the ring, and they see Todoroki knocked out cold outside the ring, covered in ice and flames. Izuku helps the medical team get Todoroki up, as Izuku is crowned, well, to the next match. As long as we love here, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And yeah, part 5 will be kind of a mixture between a couple other episodes. But I'll put this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe and just stay in tune because that fight between Deku and Bakugo is gonna be something. Hey, it's gonna be something. It's gonna be something.